finding a balance is always hard and it's challenging. And sometimes you can't just make that jump. It's a little bit easier when you're younger to take those risks. So I definitely encourage the young listeners listening to your show to be willing to make those risks now or as soon as you can, because it's much harder as you get older. You start having a family, you have expenses and things like that. And then if you're older, like you might have savings, but maybe you feel like you're not living life. And it's like, life is defined by how you define it. It's not defined by how society does. And if you feel like you'd be happier not working a 9-to-5 job, and you'd be okay maybe like downsizing your house and living in a different kind of life environment, like there's definitely options out there all over the place for doing things like that. So it just depends on what your goals are, what you want to do, and how you want to live for how you're going to balance it, I think.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is my friend Jeremy Segal, who's going to share his entrepreneurial journey. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote is from Tim Ferriss. If you are insecure, guess what? The rest of the world is too. Do not overestimate the competition and underestimate yourself. You are better than you think. As we listen to Jeremy's journey, pay attention to examples for how we overestimate the competition, and also see how Jeremy just tries things out just to see what happens, and he tests out different ideas. Last week's action step was to believe in yourself and to get around people that believe in you. How many times do we have to say you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with? Be intentional. Again, as you listen to Jeremy, see how he surrounded himself intentionally with certain types of people. Today, we're going to talk about the business of business and understanding numbers. I don't know if you realize this or not, but most business owners suck at the business of business. Instead, they do what they love, and it's usually not accounting. Life is about being intentional, and I want you to think about the fact as we listen to this story that kids can do a lot. Jeremy's got an interesting journey into entrepreneurship from a young age. In spite of that, he struggled to share in groups on stage and online. Prior to launching his podcast, he had a personal Facebook group that he rarely used and a personal LinkedIn, and that was it. He essentially never shared online in groups and definitely never on stage. After attending some local mastermind groups, Jeremy realized how much value he really had. He helped entrepreneurs take leaps in mindsets and overcome major roadblocks. He realized that he's not alone. There's a lot of hidden knowledge out there that the world doesn't have access to. That's why he started Why Influence and his Influencer Meetup Community to inspire others like you to share their hidden knowledge and wisdom in bigger ways. Let's meet our guest. Welcome to Rich Your Soul, Jeremy Segal. It's great to have you join us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Rocky.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Yeah, so I grew up in my father was an entrepreneur. He was an engineer first, and then he started a business and went through the whole journey of starting a business, building it up from an engineering perspective. So I was able to sort of watch him make the business mistakes when it comes to entrepreneurship, because he was focused so heavily on the product. So he lost a lot of ownership to people who keep reinvesting in the business. And eventually the business grew to a point where it sold to public company, and other people made a lot of money. He didn't necessarily get that payout. So I've seen the whole experience and the whole business being grown. And then I decided that I was passionate about business and entrepreneurship from a young age, being around that environment. And also because I was around that environment, I saw the different people at the organization or the company. And I looked up a lot to the CFO of the company, because I felt like the CFO had the skill set that was necessary to be a good entrepreneur, or someone that's good at business. So I knew from a young age that both I wanted to be a CFO of a company and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so that's sort of the household that I grew up in.
Did your dad specifically have conversations with you, or was it more you watching?
It was more me watching.
And sometimes that's it. It's kids watch more than and learn from that more than from conversations sometimes. It's interesting that you say that, though. So, I see a lot of business owners and they all want angel investors and they all want VC money. But what they don't realize is how much they give up by taking that and how much control they lose. And it sounds like that's what your dad went through.
Yeah, and it's especially even more true when you have a business that requires heavy R&D before the product is even to a point where it could be sold. So if that R&D period takes longer than you expect, then you'll run out of that cash, and then you have to go back and get more. And then the only thing that you can really give up to get that more is usually going to be that ownership that you are holding on to. And just, after a couple iterations of that, it can make a big impact, on the ownership position that you're in. And then when the business actually takes off and does well because of all that hard work and R&D that went into it, you may be in a position you didn't expect. So yeah, I would agree with that.
And that's true. And if at some point you give up 51%, it's not unusual that if you're not doing the job they want you to, that they fire you as the founder. I mean, it even happened to Steve Jobs from his own company.
Right. I mean, he was fortunate that didn't necessarily happen. At least not till significantly later through several acquisitions. But yeah, that's definitely a possibility for sure.
So I think you have to know up front, is this your passion, or is this something you're growing to sell, and are you okay letting go of it? And depending on what you need to make it come to fruition, as they say, a smaller percentage of something big is sometimes worth more than an entire portion of something worth next to nothing. So you have to be intentional and know what you're getting into.
Yeah, there's a balance to play there for sure.
So you have an entrepreneurial journey yourself that started at a pretty young age. Would you mind sharing that?
Yeah. I always knew from a young age that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and that I saw CFO as being the role that I wanted. So I was laser focused on both of those in my journey. I had always done side hustles. I'd always had a entrepreneur mindset. I mean, my grandma told me I was selling erasers for a nickel back in kindergarten. In middle school, I was buying and selling Pokemon cards online. There was a period of time where you could buy a Pokemon card deck and get the worst cards possible and still sell it for more than the deck cost.
Wow. Well, how did that happen? Or is it because you made a bundle that they didn't know what was in it?
So like that specifically, every Pokemon deck came with like one star card, a couple diamonds, and a couple circles. And the star cards, you get the worst one, and that would sell for more than $3, which is the price of the deck. So if you open the deck, you're guaranteed to be able to sell what's in it for more than what it costs for that pack. So, there's opportunities like that. I mean, I had a lot of things like Yahoo Auctions, eBay. I was doing that back in middle school. I sold wheat pennies for $1. So I would sell them for a penny plus $1 shipping, and just say a random wheat penny. I sold things off the shelves of Walmart. Like I did drop shipping before drop shipping was really a thing. I would have sell like golf balls off the shelves of Walmart. And when they sold, I'd be like, hey, like to my parents, can you drive me to Walmart? I would go buy the golf balls and then ship them. And I would have to get my parents to drive me to Walmart to send those out. So I've always just had that mindset and always did things like that. I would buy and sell through college. I bought and sold cars. I've, done all kinds of things. I built brands. I had a friend that started making bracelets and I was like, well, I'll just build you a website. And then like 2 months later, we're selling like $3,500 a month worth of these bracelets. And, this is all just random stuff that I'm like playing around with when I haven't even given myself permission to be a full-time entrepreneur yet. So I still had that focus on being a CFO of a company.
Do you know where that drive came from at such a young age?
Yeah, that's a good question. I honestly can't say I know for sure. I mean, I was always interested in the concept of it. I never really cared to do it to like make the money. Like I was like, that's just like, it makes sense to do something because you can make some money from it. But I wasn't like, I need to be super rich. Like I didn't need to do this for the money. I just enjoyed the process.
See, you were having fun and that was just how you played.
Yeah, you could say that.
Interesting. It's funny that you say, because you've mentioned it a couple of times. Well, I wanted to be a CFO because I wanted to understand business. The reality of the situation, which was kind of a major aha to me, is 80% of business owners don't understand the business of business. They have no idea how to read their financial reports, nor do they want to. And the next 15% know they need to read their financial reports, but can't make total sense of it. It's a rare person. It's like literally 5% of business owners who actually understand the business of business, which is why I think so few businesses survive over time, because they don't actually run the numbers to see if they're profitable. I don't know if you've seen that along your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have. I mean, that's part of the reason why I chose that path. Like I had these, I had those bracelets that were doing pretty well. I had created some masks, I would create these masks and sell them to Halloween stores and to at Comic Cons, and it was like an actual brand kind of business, but it was on the side. I never really gave myself permission to go big with it. But we were in a couple dozen Halloween stores and built a brand around this. But I just never went full time and full committed into anything because I was like still on the path of trying to be a CFO of a company. So I was like, still doing my career stuff of starting, getting my accounting degree and master's degree, starting at a Big Four accounting firm, realizing that, that sort of career path at the Big Four accounting firm wasn't really giving me the real world knowledge that's necessary to be a good entrepreneur. It was more like the corporate higher level type of things. So then I started, I transferred from there to implementing a software called NetSuite and Intact, which are cloud ERP softwares, accounting softwares. And I would help companies that outgrew QuickBooks to grow into a cloud, like full accounting ERP system. And so I was like, very dedicated to like, I need to learn more about accounting systems, because accounting systems is what is where the real power is. So if you know how to use those, know how to read those, then that is going to give you the knowledge at a deep level. And very quickly, I saw that I'm in a position where I'm consulting to other CFOs of companies and telling them how to set up their accounting. And, that was when I was 24 years old, like in a position like that, just because I was so laser focused in that direction.
Were you still with the accounting firm at this point?
It was a small accounting consulting practice. It was actually I started with is a team of 5 people, but is like just a team, like, you know, the caliber of the people I worked with was just insane. Like there's one guy who would integrate different systems together, and he could fluently program in 6 different languages. There was another girl who got her CPA exam passed and before she was old enough to have it. And she's like consulting to all these public companies, CFOs. So it's like a very high level, very strategic team that I was sort of thrown in the mix with, that I was lucky to have the opportunity to work next to. And then from there, I helped the guys start a consulting company implementing cloud accounting software. So it was sort of on the startup side and the accounting side as the first employee of a little company like that. So I was able to get a lot of experience very quickly through that sort of ecosystem.
Did the CFOs understand how to, I'm not going to say set up the software side of the accounting system, but did they understand what metrics and key performance indicators they needed for their business to be successful?
I mean, it varied significantly. I mean, just because someone has accounting background or a CFO background or, you know, is a CPA doesn't really mean anything in the real world. So like you could have everything from like got someone who knows everything and you can look up to them like, wow, this guy has like nothing missing, to like, how's this guy or gal in this position right now? Like the, you know, and I'm sure you've seen that too in your work.
I have. And it's always surprising to me that people can have these degrees and these titles, and yet they have no idea essentially what they're doing with money other than putting things in boxes. But essentially, they know where to put the numbers, but they don't know how to read the tea leaves. So they can't help you make better decisions.
Yeah. And so one of the, I guess, larger accounting projects I worked on before I got the CFO position was a trucking company, and they were growing very fast. So they had an accounting department of 7 people, and they did a lot of manual work in Excel. They would dump it to Peachtree. It's just a very tedious and error-prone system. And so after we were done implementing the software, they had a much cleaner system that ran smoother with less error, less fraud, and an accounting team of 1. So there's definitely a lot of improvements that can happen in accounting departments, I think.
Was there fraud going on in the company, or was it just things weren't going where they should have?
It's a little hard to say, but like for their specific scenario, the fraud is not necessarily specific to the accounting department, but because there's a trucking company, they may do round trips. So they'll like pick up, drop off, pick up, drop off, pick up, drop off. And they write these tickets and they're pieces of paper. But what some truck drivers could do is they could write a ticket for like 1/3 the amount they actually did, and then create like 3 tickets for something they actually only did twice. So there's some like, you know, extra supposed trips that happened that didn't. But after the accounting software was implemented, part of our implementation was we developed an app that then the truck drivers had a tablet that they had with them. So every time they would input data, it would auto-calculate, and it would also take their GPS coordinates, and then it would directly send those tickets to the accounting system. And then at the end of the day or the period that they're trying to build, they could create a consolidated invoice where it has all the tickets and gives one invoice that shows all the tickets attached. And it was just a lot more cleaner.
Sounds definitely a lot cleaner. And at this point, you're still only 24 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
So what happened next?
So after that, I got this opportunity to be a CFO of a company, and I was like, okay, well, this is sort of what I was always looking for, so let's do it. And so it was a 130 employee company. They had 7 offices. It was a medical practice, and they weren't too happy with their current CFO that they had, and so they let him go. They brought me in, and I just like deep dived. I mean, I was thrown in the mix. I had never had direct reports before, and now I'm in a position where I have like the accounting, finance, HR, marketing, and IT departments all reporting to me. We've got all these external vendors. We got these, just HR things that pop up. I was just thrown in the mix, and I enjoyed the fast-paced environment, and I learned a lot while I was there, and there was actually a lot of stuff to fix, and I saved them a lot of money very quickly. It was just a good overall experience.
How did they have enough trust in you at 25 to say, we're going to give you all of this control and power and position?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the CFO that they had was an older guy. And so I think that they didn't necessarily want another, just like, someone that's maybe like on cruise control in their career. And then another thing is I had a friend who was working there that sort of was sort of saying, hey, like, I know a guy. He at least made the introduction. Like, he can't get me that job or put me in a position, but he was like, hey, like, I know someone you could talk to, kind of thing. And then I went down and talked with the partners. There were 5 partners, all doctors. And I guess they liked me enough to trust me to do that.
Interesting. And I find most doctors are not good business people. I don't know if that's what you saw.
I think that's, in general, a true statement.
Partially, it's because they're trained to be doctors, and the business of business is absolutely ignored for them. As a matter of fact, it's kind of almost shunned.
Yeah, and they're busy people. Like one of the doctors there, he would see 65 patients a day, every day. And how much time do you have to run a business when you're generating the income for that business by seeing so many patients in the day? And then you have 5 people that are sort of equivalent to that work in different offices in the same area that need to come together to make decisions. It's just it's without a business partner involved. So they can get messy pretty quick in those scenarios, for sure.
That it can. So what happened next?
So after I did that for a while, I gave them this thing that I called the master plan. I saved them, a couple $1 million a year in recurring expenses just through miscellaneous things that, if you want, we can dig it a little bit into.
Let's do that, because I think it's interesting.
So like when I came in, like I had to learn about what's going on. Like this is a whole new business that I'm just throwing in the mix. So I'll just ask questions and get an understanding of things. And I'm a technical person. I grew up around my father's an engineer, so I was always around computer parts. I built my first computer when I was in 3rd grade. Like I know about computers. Like I could be an IT support guy, I guess. And this company had an outsourced IT company that sort of handled a lot of the server database kind of stuff. And we had I think it was a $70,000 a month monthly expense to them. And we would get these invoices, and it was like sitting on my desk, and I was like, okay, I see a $70,000 expense. Like, I don't know what to think of it. But then I would just call them and be like, can you send me an itemized invoice? Like, I just want to get an understanding of what we're paying for. And they're like, well, we've never been asked that question before. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just trying to get a better understanding of what we're paying for. Like, I don't care that it's this price. I just need an itemized invoice to understand it. And so like, okay, a couple of weeks go by and they finally send the itemized invoice, and the invoice drops to $45,000 a month from $70,000. So just right there, just by asking for an itemized invoice, they couldn't really hide whatever they were overcharging anymore, I guess. I didn't imply anything. So there you have, a couple $100,000 a year in savings just from like one follow-up on one thing.
It's funny because I run my own websites, and I know there are companies that will maintain websites and they do things, and they do have value, and it really depends on your skills. But I constantly ask, like, what exactly is involved with WordPress, updates? I load an episode every week, and I happen to notice, okay, it needs an update, and I click a button, and about a minute later, it's updated, and I move on with life. But there are companies that charge a couple $100 a month to go in there and click the button to update the website. And I think people just are lacking the knowledge. And if you would spend a few minutes to understand what's going on, you probably wouldn't have to spend anywhere what you are spending for people to help you do some of these things.
Yeah. And I don't even think that was like, I never even went into each thing and been like, oh, well, this is overpriced or this is this. Like, it was just them knowing that if they send me an itemized invoice for trying to justify the 70 grand that they're charging, it would probably be so astronomical that they're not comfortable even saying that. So it was like, I think it was that kind of scenario.
Interesting. So you helped the business. They got themselves profitable. What occurred next?
Yeah. So after that, I gave them this big master plan. It was like, here's how you can save this much money going forward. This is how you can grow your marketing for your business. This is how you can focus on structuring things. I helped do some change management stuff. I mean, you can make a whole movie about the scenario that happened when I was there. But then I was like, okay, but I'm going to move on. It's a little bit too hard to make decisions with 5 partners. Like, I left on good terms and I saved them a lot and they were happy. So it was sort of win-win. But then I was like, here's a plan. Like, I'll help you get a replacement for me, but it's not a situation where I think that I should stick around for. And then I left there. And it's like, okay, now I give myself permission to be an entrepreneur. Like, I was a CFO of a company. Let's do something. And I started an e-commerce business with a buddy of mine. It was back when the DJI Phantom 1 was out, if you're familiar with the drone industry.
We have one.
Just started.
We have the Phantom. I think we have the Phantom 3 with a high def camera on it. It's really cool. That thing flies. It goes far. Yeah,
it's impressive. So back in the Phantom 1, those like newer to the consumer end of drones. And, my friend bought one. I was like, let's just test the market. And that's what I like to do with businesses, is test something low entry barrier to try. So we bought propellers for the DJI Phantom 1. We put them on eBay. This is at the time with no website, no brand. Just bought some propellers from China, put them on eBay. And in the first week, we sold $2,000 worth of propellers. And it had a pretty good markup on it. So like, okay, there's demand here. What else can people need with this? So then it's okay, well, here's some things that commonly break. Let's look at those products. Let's make a brand. Let's make a website. We just kept going deeper into it. Eventually, we got to a point where we're buying these LCD monitors from China and then taking them apart and soldering in a receiver so that you can then pair it with a transmitter that goes to the GoPro that you can keep on the drone so that you can watch the footage while you fly it. Because at the time, it was very difficult to get a first-person view perspective. Right now, it's like pretty easy. It uses your cell phone with modern technology. But back then, there wasn't a good, easy-to-use solution. So we started selling these kits. And just like, over a 2-year period, we built a business. And the whole time, like, I started with clean books. We like kept it clean. And after 2 years, which is what a lot of people want as financial history, to look at a business, I put it up for sale and sold it within 30 days of having it for sale. So I went through the whole process of starting, building, and selling a business over a 2-year period, pretty much.
That's impressive. There's a takeaway from here that I don't know. I want to make it clear to people. So here's a new product that's come out on the market. And rather than trying to compete and create your own drone, you create the business of essentially supplying the people who have them with the parts and supplies that they need. Another example would be like the iPhone comes out and you're never going to compete with the iPhone head to head, but you can make chargers, accessories, cases, especially if you're early to market. You can make a killing selling all of these products that support the new technology that's out there. It's essentially like selling shovels to gold mine diggers, as they go out. The guys who were selling the shovels are the people who made all the money, not the people searching for gold. And it's right. Interesting to look at perspectives differently.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So you sold the business. How old are you at this point?
So this was 2 years after it was before I turned 30. That's at this point still.
And then what's next after this?
So after that, I started another business. It's one I actually still have. It's a car dealership, import cars from Japan and to the US. So there's a rule that says when a car is 25 years old, it's exempt from emissions and safety requirements. So cars that were never eligible to be in the U.S., once they turn 25 years old, they become eligible to bring in. And we sort of did a similar thing where we tested the market first. We brought in one car from Canada. Canada has a 15-year rule, so they can get cars 10 years before us. So we bought one in Canada, crossed the border at midnight the first day that the specific car was available. And I built a basic WordPress website. I was like, okay, I'll publish an article on it. And it got so much attention, it actually made the website crash. The server couldn't handle it. And so like, okay, proof of concept, like there's demand here for this niche. So then we sell that car. We decide to buy more. We have the drone business that we sold. So we used the money to buy cars. So we started buying cars from Japan and, started with 4, then 8, then just kept buying cars. So now it's been, it's been like 8 years of the car business. Now we've imported over 300 cars from Japan and we've grown over 200,000 social followers for the car business. And so now it's sort of just like, one of the business ventures that I have that's still lingering and sticking around. Interesting.
What else are you involved in?
Some other things I'm like dabbling in. So there's a cryptocurrency mining. We got into that. Ended up building a 10-foot cryptocurrency mining container. So it had 40 high-end computers, each with 8 high-end graphics cards apiece. So it was 320 graphics cards crammed inside a 10-foot shipping container that we kept in the car dealership warehouse. And we would do cryptocurrency mining. And the idea was that we wanted to sell this as a product, a modular product. And we mined a bunch of coin while we had it. The industry sort of went down a little bit. So like, okay, and we ended up liquidating it, but we didn't lose much from liquidating it. And we still have the cryptocurrency that we mined. And we have all the media from it. So it's like so now it's like a website that's sitting there with all the media that looks like a pretty legit mining operation. And we're like, okay, well, if mining ever takes off again, we'll be in a position where maybe we can do something. And lately, actually, cryptocurrency has been going up, and we've been growing our conversations with things, and we're getting to the point where now we're talking to investors about building a large-scale cryptocurrency mining farm out in potentially Washington, where there's a Bitcoin mining farm that was just liquidated, and there's low-cost power from a hydroelectric power plant. And I sort of see that as like a lottery ticket item. Like you don't know for sure if it's going to be something. You can't depend on it for a lifestyle. But like it was all about trying something, didn't work. Okay, we'll put it on the side and let's like not throw it away, but keep conversations going and see what happens. So that's like one other thing that's going on that's could be something, but isn't necessarily something right now.
And one of the things I don't think people realize in the Bitcoining mining industry, your biggest expense is electricity. And it's a question of what's worth more, the Bitcoin or the amount of electric you need to mine it. And that's where I'm thinking you were saying out west, I'm like, I wonder if you could put in a solar farm and get tax credits and use the solar farm to mine the Bitcoin. And at that point, up front, you might be spending more, but over time, if you can get free electricity, it changes the entire dollars and cents of the business.
Yeah, there's a lot of different strategies that go into that. So that's something that sort of an active current thing that we're talking through. And hydroelectric power is the specific contract has pretty aggressive electricity rates. So definitely keep it competitive.
Interesting. So how do you learn about all these different opportunities? Because they're all very niched. How do you figure those out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just requires looking for opportunities, and looking at stuff that you're interested in. Because if you have a hobby in something, maybe you're learning about something very deeply. So maybe there's something more there that you could tap into. There's a lot of businesses that result from, people doing hobbies. And actually, one of my earlier businesses, This was before I was a CFO. It was the mask one I mentioned earlier. So my friend just graduated college. I was 2 years ahead of him in school, and he came up to visit me. At the time I was working at an accounting firm, and for a weekend. And all I said was like, by the end of this weekend, we need to have a business idea. I have a couple $1,000s. Like, we can use my money. I don't care. Let's come up with an idea. I don't care what it is. And we spent 2 days straight, did nothing but looking online and seeing what's out there, seeing what we want to do. And at the end of it, we saw that there's some guy building these masks with heat sensitive paint, where like it's a fabric mask, and when you wear it over your face as you breathe, it had this changing effect because the paint would turn clear when it's heated, and it would turn back to the color when it's cooled. So it had this cool changing effect. And the guy like just did small batches. People would always be like, "Hey, like I want more," but he wasn't really fulfilling demand. So then we were like, okay, there's demand for this mask. Maybe we can do something here. And at the same time, I started looking to finding the paint, and I was like, why is this paint so expensive? Like, it just seems so expensive. So then I go on Alibaba, I find a manufacturer for the paint pigments, and I realize, okay, it's significantly cheaper buying it directly from the manufacturer. So essentially what I did was I started a business making these masks, but also repackaging these pigments into jars and selling that as a product. And there's sort of two different brands that came out of it. Made two different websites because they're not necessarily the same audience. One is more art related. One is other like Halloween and Comic-Con related. And, for like $3,000, we just, bought some pigments. We bought some fabric, and we bought a sewing machine and just started making these things. And, the $3,000 was able to turn it into about $10,000 once the pigments were sold. But when we put the masks up for sale, we sold about 10 grand in masks. This is close to Halloween, so it's not like that every month, but we sold about 10 grand in masks in the first couple of weeks of listing it up. So like just like out of nowhere, we went from nothing to having an idea, very quickly executing on that idea for all relatively low risk in the whole scheme of things.
And it's quite interesting because, again, and you've done this multiple times, it's all low risk, it's all low money, it's all taking the time to find where there's opportunity in the market, find where there's cost mismatches that you can take advantage of, or rule mismatches that you can take advantage of and exploit to your benefit. I mean, that even goes back to childhood, right? You're finding things on sale somewhere and then putting them up on eBay or whatever and selling them for more. It's just having that eye to be able to do that and to make those choices, to take action on those choices quickly. Because all of these things seem like they're done relatively quickly. They're not like, let's spend months thinking about it.
Yeah. And I think that has pros and cons. Like, you could have like things that generally happen quickly can die quickly. So you can look at the businesses that I've built and maybe think, what if I invested all this effort into like a recurring revenue model software company, right? Maybe I'd be in a different position right now. But this path worked for me up to this point. And I think, just got to, like you said, take action. Like, that's the biggest thing. If you don't take action, nothing happens.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. And that's true. Now, some point along this whole journey, you studied to be a business broker. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I have this accounting background, always trying to think bigger. I had gone through the whole process of building and selling a business. I was thinking, maybe I'll be in a position one day to maybe buy and sell businesses or help other people with that. And so I was like, okay, well, let me learn more about it myself, since, I'll probably be going through this cycle several times throughout my life. And there's an organization called the IBBA, the International Business Broker Association. I started going to their conferences. I got certified with their certification, which is the Certified Business Intermediary, which basically is like a certification for saying you can be a business broker. It's not required. It's just like a thing you can show off, I guess. And then you needed a real estate license to actually act as a business broker, which varies by state. So you'll have to check with your state. And then I experimented to see if that was something I was passionate about. And after trying it for a little while, I'm just not someone that is like a general salesperson. Like, I can't be on the phone all day. I can't I just have no passion to do that. Like, all the businesses that I did up to this point, all was done through marketing, not sales, because I build brands. I drive traffic. It's all marketing, but I was never just sitting there like cold calling and doing sales and using CRMs and things like that. And I very quickly realized it just wasn't a passion for me. And so it's one thing that I struggle with sometimes, is seeing opportunities in too many places. So I decided to let my real estate license lapse so I wouldn't get distracted and think that I needed to put energy into this. So I don't pursue the business brokerage path anymore, at least for a service.
And, one of the things is understanding your passions, knowing when you've made a choice that no longer fits with what you enjoy doing, and then having the courage to just cut the cord and say, I'm out of here regardless. And I think that's an important part of it. Just out of curiosity, though, because I know just like people flip houses, people flip businesses. I would think with your background that flipping businesses might be something that you'd be interested in doing.
Yeah. And I think it's something that will come with time. Like, I definitely am like that. I enjoy it. I'm finding that I'm caring a lot more about impact, like positive impact, than like trying to make money. So like, even the people I surround myself by, if all you care about is making money, like generally I don't stick around as being in your group. I'm definitely, like, all my businesses were all, even though they made money, they were 100% geared towards making a positive impact. Like these cars, like I had so many customer testimonials from people that bought cars from me that I made videos of, that, they got their dream car. They were so happy. So like that, feels fulfilling. These masks, same thing, just like people got so much excitement and happiness out of these masks. And I don't know if we have time for this, but there's a story of how the mask even saved someone's life. And it's just crazy sometimes. So I definitely am passionate about the positive impact. And I think that combining that with some kind of starting, building, buying, going through that cycle kind of with businesses is something in my future, I think.
So we're going to talk about how you balance money versus life, but you can't leave people hanging on the mask and saving lives story. So you got to share.
All right. I was at a New York Comic-Con, which that's the second largest Comic-Con in the country. And I had a booth there. We were selling the masks. And someone came up and he was just like, hey, man, can I talk to you for a second? And I was like, okay. And we stepped to the side. And he shares this story about how his best friend had one of our masks and loved it so much. He kept it with him and carried it with him everywhere. And at the time, this kid had it in his glove box of his car. And he was driving his car one night and got in a terrible accident. He was like gushing out a ton of blood on his arm. And nobody else was around. Like, it was the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. And the guy like reaches in the glove box, grabs this mask because he knows he has it with him, like everywhere he goes. And he tied it around his arm to hold the blood in, to slow the bleeding long enough that the ambulance was able to come. And like, he stayed alive till that point. Very unintended impact of what like a product like a mask could make. So I was like, here, just take a couple masks. Like, thank you for sharing that story to that guy. But that's crazy hearing some of those stories like that.
And you never know what's going to happen in life, right? You just go out there and you put out into the world and hopefully it all comes together. So let's get back to this. How do you balance money versus life? Because this is an area that most people are way out of balance in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a balance. You need to know what you need to exist and be happy. Like there's a common saying out there saying as an entrepreneur, you got to be willing to live how others won't so that you can live how others can't. And it's sort of along the lines of like starting a business could take 80 hours a week grinding in order to get to a point where maybe you're working 5 hours a week and you're living an awesome life. And people are like, oh, wow, you're so lucky. It's like, well, I just put in all this hard work and hard time that you weren't willing to do. And now I'm here. Like people sometimes skip that. So I think that finding a balance is always hard and it's challenging. And sometimes you can't just make that jump. It's a little bit easier when you're younger to take those risks. So I definitely encourage the young listeners listening to your show to be willing to make those risks now or as soon as you can, because it's much harder as you get older. You start having a family, you have expenses and things like that. And then if you're older, like you might have savings, but maybe you feel like you're not living life. And it's like, life is defined by how you define it. It's not defined by how society does. And if you feel like you'd be happier not working a 9-to-5 job and you'd be okay, maybe like downsizing your house and living in a different kind of life environment, like there's definitely options out there all over the place for doing things like that. So it just depends on what your goals are, what you want to do, and how you want to live for how you're going to balance it, I think.
And in order for you to do that, you actually have to make that decision of what is it that you want in life and how do you want to live and what do you want instead of just following the drift. You have to be intentional. So what are you working on currently?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's sort of what brought me here to talk with you is, this whole story that I've shared so far is stuff that I never shared. Like this whole journey, like I never posted online. Unless you talk to me one-on-one or you're a friend of mine and we just like caught up. Even then I didn't maybe share near this detail. So like I started realizing that, I wanted to help more people. And I wanted to become a better communicator. I wanted to, when I was in a room with people, I was always drawn towards people that were more authentic and vulnerable. And so I was like, okay, well, how do I become more authentic and vulnerable? And there's a whole, like, this is my whole entrepreneur journey we sort of shared, but I have a whole sharing journey that is sort of haphazardly along it, but then also more after it as well. Like when I first met my wife about 8 years ago, her first gift to me was a check to join Toastmasters, if that indicates like how I was as a communicator. And Toastmasters is like a public speaking, self-development kind of thing.
I'm in it right now, just for the same purpose, to learn to be better.
Yeah, and it's great for that. It took me 4 years to cash that check. So like I never really took action on it. And the same time I cashed that check and joined Toastmasters, I joined a couple of mastermind groups. And the combination of standing in front of a group, getting more comfortable talking, which I was very uncomfortable, and then going to these mastermind groups where I have this entrepreneur wisdom that I was able to help other people. It was the combination of those two was like, okay, like my voice does matter and actually it can help a lot of people. So maybe I should try to go a little bit bigger with that and help more people. And then, so like now I've got a podcast. I interview influencers about why they're sharing, a deep dive into like why they started, why they still do it. Because it's something I struggled with, like why share. So I've had a lot of YouTubers, like over 1 million subscribers. I've had Instagrammers, Twitch streamers, things like that. And then I have a community that I've built that is for influencers and aspiring influencers to help them grow and get their voice out there and make a bit positive impact for what they're passionate about. And so like I'm just trying to help people find their hidden wisdom and then share their hidden wisdom in a large way, because that's something that I feel like I lacked the capability capacity to do for a long time. And I still am struggling to figure that out now. I'm just stumbling my way through it.
And everyone has a hidden wisdom. The problem is it's hidden from us. Like the whole world can usually see your wisdom except you, because it's so natural to you that you don't see it as wisdom. We almost throw it away until we realize what our gifts are. And like for you, the fact that you understand numbers so well is a gift. Most business owners, clueless. And as we talked about before, even CFOs, many times not so clear on the numbers. So that's a gift that you have amongst many others. You have the gift to find opportunity in small places and turn it into a business quickly. And so those are important things to share, but we all have our individual gifts, and you have to figure out what they are. And then it's how do you create influence? So you've spoken to a lot of influencers. What have you learned that if somebody wanted to become or start to be an influencer, what are some of the first steps they should take?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And good question. I mean, the main thing is that you got to start somewhere. Like for me, my journey, like I started with Toastmasters and mastermind groups because I had to first discover that it mattered to share. And then I figured out, okay, well, it does matter to share. So let me go bigger with it. And I had a deeper why. So starting with sharing helps you discover your why. If you already know your why, then you can skip that step. But knowing a really powerful why is important because it's not easy to, keep going and keep sharing and keep putting yourself out there, especially if you're trying to grow influence and grow communities. So you need a powerful why. And that's what my podcast is about. It's called Why Influence, like literally, why do you influence? So once you get that down, then it's all about like continuing. Like a lot of people think, hey, I started a podcast. I'm a podcaster now. I've got a couple episodes, and then they stop. But it's not real unless you keep going. And sometimes you don't see the results until you do it for a while. I had a guest, he shared something pretty powerful. I'll share with you is, he said, if you find a message that resonates with people that can make a positive impact on people, like we were talking about earlier with the gifts, like something that may be a small give for you could be a giant receive for someone else. Like if I'm like gifted looking at financials, like it may take me a second to answer something that they may never even see. And so like that is a big gift. So like if you find something inside you that you're able to help people and that you have a message that resonates, then you're ripping the world off by not going as big as possible, because there's other people out there who need to hear your message, who will grow tremendously from hearing your message. And if you're not sharing it and you're not sharing it big enough, then you're not going to reach that person and those people, and you're basically ripping them off. So just stop ripping the world off and go bigger.
And that is a mindset shift of when you don't share, you're being selfish. And people don't realize, nor do they think that way. And because they're meek and they're selfish in that they're not willing to be courageous and go for it. And you can go for it, as you've shown many times, with very small steps and very small investments. No one's telling you to go out and spend a fortune. There are ways to do this without spending a lot of money. Take little steps and figure it out.
Right.
One of the things you talk about, and maybe you can share what you mean by it, is being vulnerable and authentic. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I have a perfect answer for you, but I'll try. So being vulnerable is like, if someone asks you something, like, and you say something, you're not like, you're wholeheartedly like releasing instead of holding back. And I know that before I started my podcast and before all this stuff, like, I had helped a lot of people make a lot of money, save a lot of money. When I was a CFO, like big money was made and saved. Like accounting people I helped before, I helped start accounting company, like helped a lot of people make money. And like, I was like working for, I had I had taken multiple $20,000 pay cuts down to making like 24 grand a year with like a master's degree and stuff, like just to get experience. So like I had constantly given so much that I felt a little burnt out because I was helping so much and I wasn't really receiving. And that's why I felt like, okay, I got to hold on to something as I do these businesses. And now I'm to a point like, okay, I can release again. And I'm like intentionally like trying to do that as much as possible. And I'm finding that doing this podcast, having conversations like this, like I just want to, give, like, I'm not even thinking like I want to give as much. I just am letting it give. And like, I'm being told often lately is like, I appreciate like your vulnerability. I appreciate your authenticity. You're so generous with this conversation and giving. Like if I'm going to have a 10-minute conversation or a 15-minute conversation with someone, like, it's not just going to be like, hey, like this is me. Hey, this is you. It's like, how can I help you? And let me have them walk away with something valuable. It's not like I'm trying to sell them anything. I think that, vulnerability and authenticity. And so then authenticity would be like that you're true to yourself, that you're not being influenced by other people. So if you can be true to who you are with the authenticity, and then you have the vulnerability of, sharing in a very giving way that you're not holding back, then I think that the combination of those two can make you like the most in a position where you can give the most and make the most positive impact. And that's what I'm seeing true for a lot of the influencers that I talk to, is the people that are the most authentic, the most vulnerable are the ones that are going to make the biggest gives and the biggest positive impacts.
You know who I think is one of the first people who probably did that so well, and it shows in her bank account, is Oprah. That was kind of, she was so vulnerable about her weight and her struggles and everything else compared to everything out there. And people used to essentially mock her. And now she's built an empire that is amazing. So it works. It's not easy to do, but it works.
Yeah, I think it's a constant evolving journey. Like, I definitely don't have the answers. I've only been doing this like a year and a half now, very, very intentionally. Like, I've been doing Toastmasters and masterminds for a couple of years, more than that. But when I started my podcast and then started these communities, really, really like big time trying to self-develop and I'm only like a year and a half into that part of my journey. So, but I've already seen a lot of growth from what I've been doing. So I'm happy about that.
That's very cool. We always like to inspire the audience to take an action step. What is something the audience can do this week to move forward just a little bit in their lives?
Yeah. So I'll give you two words, intention. So do something with intention and then actually act on it, take action. So if you are trying to start a business, have intention of like, this is the business I want to do. This is what I want to create. Like, it's all these wants, right? But then take action, take some steps to at least get to where it's starting, and combine that intention and action. And if it's something even for small wins, like maybe you have a business or maybe you're in a career and there's something that you want to change, like just put intention behind it and then take some action behind it. I think that if you think of an example that relates to where you are right now and something that you can make a big impact on yourself, just think of how you can be intentional to make a difference in it and then take that action. And I think that'll make a big difference.
And that it can. And I think for a lot of people, and I know even for me, taking the first step is always the hardest. But once you get going, things become easier. And so I always just tell people, get started, and everything little by little will come together. You'll figure it out as you go along, but do it in a way that's not risky. Don't, quit your job when you've got a wife and kids and no money in the bank and say, I'm going for it. Do it with appropriate measures in place. Jump with a parachute so that you don't crash. That's all.
Yeah, the hardest thing is the start. And especially as I'm talking to more influencers, I mean, it's very similar with business, but it's like, just start. Like, if you're trying to do a podcast, create a podcast. If you want a YouTube channel, start a YouTube channel. Like, there's too many people like, I need a better camera. I need a better microphone. I need a better this, or I need wait for this or get this software. Like I've had a YouTuber that got his first million views on YouTube with just his cell phone. Like there's so many examples I could give you that, you don't need fancy editing software. You don't need fancy equipment. Like if you want to do a high quality podcast, you could literally sit in your closet with a cell phone. You have all the clothes around you and do pretty good audio. So, just start with whatever it is. So have intention and take some action.
There you go. Just start. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
I think you need to find what's important to yourself and follow that. So, if it's a lifestyle, then focus on that and then figure out how to make your world around that lifestyle. So, for me, entrepreneurship isn't about making money. It's about building a lifestyle that I can be creative and do what I want to do when I want to do it. So just, I think that abundance comes when you're happiest. So think of a world where you could be happiest and then just take steps to move in that direction.
Life is pretty abundant when you can do what you want, when you want, how you want. It
Right.
really is. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Yeah. I shared a lot about my entrepreneur journey and how I had to give myself permission to be an entrepreneur. So I wish that, I'm definitely happy with the path that I took, but I also think that if I gave myself permission at a much younger age, maybe I wouldn't have gotten the deep learning and the accounting background, but I would have potentially started something very big at a young age. So I think giving yourself permission younger for whatever it is important to you. So for me, it would have been, I would have given myself permission to be an entrepreneur younger. And I would have wished that I gave myself permission to have a voice when I was younger, because even the giving myself permission to have a voice came much later for me.
You were an entrepreneur when you were younger. You just refused to admit it.
Yeah. Even now, I probably still struggle with that.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
I'd say do what feels right to you. And if there's people around you that are telling you they completely disagree, just think hard on it, because people come from different perspectives and, it's your life, your happiness. And if people don't agree with how you want to do things, maybe that's them having some kind of impact on what it is that you're trying to do. So just make sure that you stay true to who you are, stay authentic to who you are. And just know that people come from other perspectives. Sometimes people don't really truly understand what you understand. And the only way that you can make something happen that nobody else sees is by taking action and pushing through all those barriers that could come up in your way. So just stay true to who you are and do what you think is going to bring you the most happiness, because that probably is the right decision.
And you can always follow a dual path. So if your parents tell you to do XYZ, you can do XYZ while on the side doing ABC until you prove to yourself and the world that ABC is a much better choice than XYZ. It's not always all or nothing. You have the ability to try different things because you just never know.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah.
Where can people find you and connect and learn more about your work?
Yeah, so all of my sharing journey stuff, that's called Why Influence, WHY Influence. So it's whyinfluence.com, WHYinfluence.com. My @signs, Why Influence. So on Instagram, it's @WhyInfluence. On YouTube, it's Why Influence. But everything is linked through the Why Influence website. So if you just want to go to whyinfluence.com. And then I mentioned the meetup that I've been doing. I've been doing it every week for about 5 months now, and we're growing to be consistently around 30 people every week. And I'm definitely looking to keep that going and growing. So if you have any desire to grow your influence, grow your voice, and learn more about how to do that, or maybe you're doing it and how to do better, I definitely encourage you to join the meetup. I have details on my website for that as well. It's all on whyinfluence.com, WHYinfluence.com. But I'd love to hear from you. If you got anything from this podcast, please send me a private message or an email and just like tell me some thoughts, or send it to Rocky and have him forward it to me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And just on Rocky's behalf, like, I've got a podcast myself, and I know how hard it is to hear from the people on the other side. So if you've been listening to Rocky for a while now, like multiple episodes, and you're liking his content, just like take a moment to send him an email or send him a private message and tell him how much value you're getting from listening to his podcast. Like, he didn't tell me to say this, but it's coming from another podcaster and someone who appreciates hearing these unintended consequences, because you don't always know who's listening or what kind of impact it can have. Just, send him a message and thank him for doing the podcast, because I think it's a valuable thing that he's giving to you, and he's not charging anything to be consuming these.
And thank you for that, Jeremy. And it's true. It's a conversation we have in the world of podcasting. When you read a blog post, you're sitting there reading, usually on a computer or whatever. It's so easy to leave feedback. But most people who are listening to a podcast, they're driving, they're exercising, they're doing something, and there's no easy way to leave feedback. And then by the time they think about it, life goes on. And so it's always been one of the things in the world of podcasting. It tends to be much more one way than in many other mediums where you can instantly respond back. And so therein lies a new opportunity for you, Jeremy. Figure out a way that podcasters can easily connect with their audience, and their audience can immediately send them a message back right in the middle of a podcast going, I just loved what you said about that.
Yeah,
I don't know how we do that.
Well, for now, since we don't have that solution, just send Rocky a message and thank him.
And thank you for being here. And again, I've been to some of Jeremy's meetups, and I've connected with him on some of the different programs. Go check out his work. He does great stuff. Thank you all. And thank you, Jeremy, for being here today.
Yeah, thank you all too. And thanks, Rocky. I really appreciate it.
Do you know your why? Was it surprising to you that business owners don't understand the business of business or understand the numbers? And, you can't always trust your accountant. They may not know either. Some of them actually hate accounting. They went into it because they thought it was a good career choice, not because it was what they loved to do. I love how Jeremy tries things out and tests and scales over time. He's open to experiences and seeing what's possible. This week's action step: do something with intention and take action towards it. That's the biggest struggle, I think, taking action. Good news. Next week, we have on Dan Miller to talk about 48 days to the life and work you love. He's got a proven program and framework that can help you to bring about changes to your work and life. I love being part of his group as I go through my journey. He'll be on to share his wisdom. If you know of business owners who struggle with the business of business, please let them know about me, because that's the problem I solve. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.